Our agriculture correspondent Conor McCauley watched the committee hearing.
He acknowledged it himself. There was huge interest in what he had to say.
I think there's maybe a little bit more attention on this session than the first one we had back in September.
Andrew McCormick is the senior civil servant in the Department for the Economy, charged with clearing up the RHI mess. Today it emerged that he'd told the DUP of his belief that one of their special advisers was exerting pressure to keep the scheme open, even as applications were flooding in and officials wanted to shut it down.
There was a view from others in the party that the date originally proposed should be extended. That we were aware of at the time. We were aware of some of those conversations through the summer of 2015. I was never clear exactly who was involved. The person we were dealing with mainly was the SPAD in DETI, Timothy Cairns, but he was making it clear to us that it was not his own idea, nor the Minister's idea.
That led to an obvious question from the Public Accounts Committee. Whose idea was it?
The understanding that I expressed to Minister Hamilton and to his advisor in recent times is that my understanding was that Andrew Crawford had been the person exerting that influence.
Mr McCormick was at pains to say he'd no direct evidence of that pressure. In the summer of 2015, Andrew Crawford was then Arlene Foster's SPAD at the Department of Finance. His brother is a poultry farmer and an RHI claimant. At one point in proceedings, Arlene Foster's name came up too.
Having considered all the material that you have had the opportunity to review, have you seen any evidence whatsoever of wrongdoing by the First Minister or the former First Minister?
No.
Absolutely none?
No.
Okay.
Mr McCormick was only getting started in a session where he confirmed he was permitted to speak freely. He said there'd been a perfect storm of circumstances that led to the huge projected overspend. A lack of understanding amongst officials of the lucrative subsidy. The fact that the industry did understand and that 50 to 100 individuals or installers were spreading the word to get in. And then, this bombshell.
Around the period of July, there is evidence of some premature information being made available to the industry, and some documents appeared with me anonymously after Christmas, and this needs further investigation. I prefer not to say too much about these because I don't want to prejudice the investigation, but the consequence is very serious because this shows that there was premature awareness of the potential for the tariff to be reduced, and the message went within the sector: get in quick.
Would that be suggestions that it's come from within your department?
Yes, yes.
And not from any other source?
The evidence suggests that there was some information being shared prematurely with the industry from departmental officials, yes.
There were further revelations about contact with the police over allegations of abuse in the scheme, and that a meeting Mr McCormick had with the former Deputy Minister Jonathan Bell, who watched proceedings in the chamber, may have been recorded without his knowledge or consent. It seems that the drip feed of revelations about the RHI scheme has finally turned into a torrent. Conor McCauley, BBC Newsline.
Well, in a statement issued just a short time ago, Andrew Crawford confirmed that during the summer of 2015 he had spoken to his fellow special advisor in the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Investment about the RHI scheme. He said he would have been offering informal advice and assistance to a colleague and was not speaking on behalf of the then Finance Minister Arlene Foster. He repeated that he had not sought to keep the scheme open against the wishes of the Deputy Minister Jonathan Bell and had advised that changes to the tariff take effect from October the 1st. Meanwhile, Samuel Hamilton's special advisor John Robinson is coming under pressure to step aside after he confirmed that his father-in-law is involved in the controversial RHI scheme. Mr Robinson had insisted he has no role in his father-in-law's business, but opposition parties at Stormont say he should not be advising Simon Hamilton at a time when the minister is dealing with the aftermath of the flawed scheme. Our political correspondent Enda McClafferty reports.
John Robinson is a key player in the DUP's backroom team. He's been advising the leadership on how best to deal with the press for the past 10 years. But now he's making the headlines. And here's why.
The very first piece of information given to me in a ministerial office by the DUP party officer appointed Special Advisor Timothy Kearns, that you will not be allowed to reduce the tariff on this scheme because Timothy Johnson, Special Advisor to the then First Minister, and John Robinson, the current, at that time, Director of Communications to the DUP, and now the Special Advisor to the Economy Minister, have such extensive interests in the poultry industry. Minister, this has not been allowed in your agenda.
Both special advisors rejected those allegations. In his statement, John Robinson said, "I have no personal interest in the poultry industry," he said. He went on to add, "Two of my brothers are poultry farmers, but they have no connections to RHI." But 24 hours later, he had to issue a second statement after it emerged his father-in-law was involved in the scheme. Again, John Robinson denied any personal involvement. "I have never had any personal financial interest in the RHI scheme," he said. He continued, "At no point have I ever advised anyone to join the scheme or sought to benefit in any way from it." He confirmed his father-in-law was in the scheme, saying he purchased two 36-kilowatt boilers for his poultry business in May 2015. They were installed in July, and he applied to the scheme in August. This, he said, was before he married in October. He added, "At no time did we discuss any aspect of the scheme, nor was I aware of his application." Some have questioned how the information was released.
It proves that the DUP's way of doing business is they won't necessarily tell you a lie, but they won't necessarily disclose everything.
John Robinson wasn't up for talking today, so we didn't get a chance to ask him if he's the right man to advise the Minister Simon Hamilton about fixing a scheme which his father-in-law is involved in.
Well, I think that obviously there is a conflict of interest there, and I think that that is something that ought to have been disclosed at the earliest opportunity. It does not necessarily mean that it would prevent him doing the job well, but people ought to be aware that he has that conflict.
John Robinson, the party officer who made a career out of helping others deal with tricky political questions, has had to come up with some answers himself. Enda McLafferty, BBC Newsline, Stormont.
Well, joining me now, our business correspondent Julian O'Neill and our political editor Mark Devonport. So Mark, first of all, what's been the impact of today?
Oh, well, it's very unusual to get such a senior civil servant releasing so many bombshells, even the revelation that one of his conversations he thinks may have been taped with his former minister. There was plenty of grist for the various opposition parties to talk about in relation to this. They came out and, for instance, Sinn Féin was talking about this being more evidence of mishandling of the RHI scheme. The Ulster Unions were talking about a gross abuse of power here, but there were some elements in the Permanent Secretary's evidence that Arlene Foster might have taken a little bit of heart from.
Julian, turning to you, Simon Hamilton's going to release the names of the RHI beneficiaries next Wednesday.
That's right, it is Simon Hamilton's intention, and I stress that word of his, to publish a who's who of RHI recipients on the 25th, which of course is the last sitting day of the Assembly. We're talking, Tara, potentially about a list of up to 1,400 businesses. Now, the Minister and the DUP have been under political pressure to do this. All we've had thus far is a leaking of information around the location of boilers based on partial postcodes.
But there is legal action. What exactly do we know of that?
Not a huge amount, Tara. The Assembly last week, or earlier this week, sorry, was told that it was the Department's intention to publish the list last week, but it held off under threat of injunction. The Public Accounts Committee today was told that legal action is ongoing, but the Minister wants openness and transparency around this. 90% of those people he wrote to before Christmas did not consent to their names being put into the public domain. He's got to balance that. He's now in the process of writing to them again, very mindful of the Data Protection Act, but he does think that it is in the public interest to publish, and one assumes if this intention is carried through, along with a list of businesses, we will will get information around when they applied. Was it during the well-publicised spike that we've been talking about, for example, and how much they have received in payments?
And Mark, who's going to take more comfort out of today, Arlene Foster or Jonathan Bell?
Well, Jonathan Bell was there watching the civil servant give his evidence. I suppose from his perspective, up until now, he's been a voice crying on his own that there was special advisor involvement in relation to this. So he'll at least take a bit of comfort from the fact that Andrew McCormick has repeated that belief, even though Andrew Crawford has denied what has been suggested. Arlene Foster, she won't like the fact that her former special advisor has been put centre frame in this, but she will take heart from the fact that Dr McCormick said there was no evidence of wrongdoing on her part. She had taken all the advice her officials had given her, and at the stage when she was in charge of this scheme, she wasn't being told to close it down urgently, because at that point there simply wasn't that much uptake in terms of people signing up to take on the scheme.
Mark, we'll leave it there. Thank you. And Julian.